I love donuts, but I don't eat donuts in uniform. I know that. It's too easy for the cameras to come out.
Take a moment to breathe, grab a beverage or two. We got professional guests with lots of stories for you. So take a seat right here and join us on Careers Over Beers.
You're already recording, aren't you?
I'm already recording.
And you're on it. This is you are legit, top tier.
I don't know about that. I've done a few of these now.
Yes.
So thank you all for tuning in and listening to Careers Over Beers podcast. It means a lot. I'm your host, Jesse Krause, and today I have a super special guest on for me. And if you're active on social media, on the internet, especially Twitter, you're probably familiar with who I'm interviewing today. So please give it up for Trooper Ben, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me. This is always an exciting, nervous, but moment that I'm looking forward to with anybody. So thank you for inviting me here today.
Well, I really appreciate you coming out here. I know it's probably a drive for you.
A little bit. I mean, I do live up in north central Kansas, up by Lindsborg, but I happen to be down here today for a lot of safety talk. So I was sort of down in south central and Wichita area, so it made it work out with my calendar to accomplish this today.
And a lot of your job is on the road anyways, right? So
it is.
It's not that strenuous for you.
No, I was telling you, I just got a new patrol car. So actually being in a patrol car, a new patrol car is quite a luxury. Mm-hmm. And that's my place of comfort. It seems like patrolling, driving around, and doing what I do.
Does it ever get old sitting in a car like that the whole time you're on duty?
It can. I mean, there's days where there ain't nothing happening out there. And you're like, my goodness, the flat slowness at times of Kansas, that you're like, man, what's going on? I need to find something to get active, to get out of my patrol car. So there's things to do always. There's always people to stop, but certainly is some slow times at times. So it's good, though.
So when there's boring days like that and nothing's really going on, that's when you kind of bump down your limit for what you're going to pull somebody over at,
isn't it? You're right. Yes. I mean, the reality is the number one question I think that I and most officers get is, how fast can I go before I get a speeding ticket? I mean, that's what everybody wants to know. Mm-hmm. And that threshold does change with every passing minute. I mean, with the weather and road conditions, traffic flow, daytime, nighttime, all the different things. So when it's slower out and there ain't nothing going on, it's like, hey, my threshold gets to be a little more tighter to what the postal speed limit is, to give me something to do to make contact with people. Not to say we're going to give out more tickets, but just to have more contact and talk to people and try to get them to be where they need to be. Yeah. To always make sure the roadways are safe.
Right. And that's the ultimate goal, obviously.
It is, absolutely. It is.
And I actually interviewed a Wichita police officer a while back on here, and I asked him the same question. I was like, so how fast can you go?
I know.
And he said, well, it's illegal technically to go over at all. I'm like, yeah.
He had a good answer there is what he did. I mean, it varies. Everybody always asks that, like, how fast? What can I do? I think every officer's like for me, the reality is I go to work, I get a feel of what the roadway's doing. I mean, it's different every day. So morning to evening, a Friday compared to a Tuesday. So I think what I do and most troopers go out there is they get out there, start working the road. They turn on their radar to get a feel of what the roadway is doing. And then we probably, like I do, have a number in our mind that says, hey, this is when I start stopping vehicles, and I'm going to stop them and give them warnings. And then, hey, at this number is when I'm going to stop people and start giving out tickets. And then we go forward and start doing that, because there is a point where it's too fast. But that changes on a Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. People are flying down the road. They're running well over 100 miles per hour. There's a lot of vehicles doing that. So the reality is we probably have to adjust our tolerance a little bit. Not that we want people to be driving as fast as they are, but if we would stop people for just minimally barely going over the speed limit, then we're going to miss the big fish, the one that's really flying down the road that we really need to stop. So we have to adjust and in some ways give some leniency to know that, hey, around the corner, over the hill crest, there's going to be something probably bigger and more dangerous that needs to be addressed. So let's really look for those bigger fish, the ones that are really causing challenges for other motorists on the roadways. So
not the guy that's late to work and he's pushing it a little harder than he should.
Yeah, it's crazy how fast people are driving these days.
You said multiple people driving over 100 miles an hour.
Yes.
You see that often?
Man, significantly. It has changed dramatically over the last couple of years. For listeners, for viewers, I'll tell you, over the last 3 years from COVID, the roadways have changed dramatically. when it comes to in 2019, I mean, I just seen this statistic the Highway Patrol put out not too long ago. When we look at vehicles going over 100 miles per hour in Kansas, we track how many tickets we write and at what speeds. And in particular, like vehicles going over 100 miles per hour, how many were there? So in 2019, we had, I want to guess the number was close to like 2,500. So 2,500 people were ticketed by troopers in 2019 for going over 100 miles per hour. So 101, 130, whatever it is, but over 100 miles per hour. That's crazy, first off. But then in 2020, that increased by about 1,000 more people. So it was like 3,500. Mm-hmm. And then in 2022, it was about 4,500 speeding tickets of people going over 100 miles per hour. So the roadway has gotten significantly faster over the last couple of years following COVID. And it makes for a more dangerous trip for the motorists who are not doing that. And it's why we out there making traffic stops and trying to be visible and just do the things we do out there.
What's the correlation there?
Man, I don't know. I think we're still trying to figure that out. Emergency managers, NHTSA, KDOT, Highway Patrol, safety people are trying to figure out why, what's going on here, what's causing people to be driving faster. Or maybe it's just for the fact that when the COVID years were occurring, we were all penned up. We're all hunkered down.
Yeah.
And for those that are on the roadway, I think they started having this feeling that they weren't going to be stopped, and that maybe officers weren't out. They were on COVID leave, or they were being restrictive on who we were stopping or not. And I think this is my philosophy.
This is all speculation.
Yes, is that people started to build this thought that, hey, I'm not going to get stopped. I can do this right now. And it sort of continued on. And people are just driving really, really fast.
That's odd.
It's crazy.
That's something I would have never guessed.
Really, I tell you, what was traditional in times past, traditional, we see vehicles traveling over 100 miles per hour every so often, 105, 107. That's what it was for the majority of my career, and I've been a trooper now for 24 years for the Kansas Highway Patrol. But this last couple of years following COVID, now we see vehicles 120, 125, 130, 135, just way faster, and the frequency of these vehicles at that speed are seen more commonly now.
That's bizarre.
It is. I would assume you've had somebody blow by you, and you're like, "Dang, what's going on?"
I have seen it.
It is.
I'm like, what are they doing? Hopefully, it's a bathroom emergency or something, right?
We see that. We hear that.
You get pull them over? They're like, yes. I really got to go, man.
Yes. It's the things you hear. It's like, okay, I don't know about that.
Yeah, I can imagine that there's some pretty wild excuses out there from people you pull over.
There is. I think of just a couple moments. There's so many things that officers hear. And the simple speed violation, it's speeding. It's not significant, but it is dramatic on the roadways, and it's a contributing factor for what causes crashes, so we need to be making those traffic stops. But, when you make an approach, you walk up there and you start talking to the driver, like, hey, I'm Trooper Gardner for the Kansas Highway Patrol. The reason I've stopped you is for this. And at times I'll ask, is the reason why you're doing this? And then you wait to what's it going to be? What's the response? What are they going to say? So I'm late to this or whatever it is. I've had one that stands out in my mind. I stopped a vehicle going to 105, and the lady was pregnant, and she was like, I'm trying to get to the hospital. I got to get to the hospital. I'm going to labor. And I'm like, I don't know about this, because in the vehicle was all these other passengers, but she was driving. And I'm like, I just don't know if you would be driving if you're in labor.
I don't think you'd grab the crew of,
why
load
would
up the van and
why would you be the one driving? So I was like, I don't know about this. And I actually gave her a ticket. And interesting enough, a couple weeks later, I got a subpoena to go to court. And I was like, what ticket is it? And I realized, it's the lady that was pregnant. She's taking me to court. So I go to court. And honestly, I actually called the hospital. I was like, hey, do you know, does so-and-so, did they have a child that day? And they wouldn't tell me because of HIPAA rights. So I was like, dang it, I wonder if actually she did go into labor, had that child that day. And when I went to court, there she is, and in court with the baby. And I'm like, I just didn't know if it was factual or not. But the things we hear, the things we see out there, I don't typically want to give out tickets. It's not my goal to give out tickets. Mm-hmm. What my goal is to get people to be compliant, to get the roadways safer. And that can be in a wide variety of different ways. It could be as simple as just presence, my visibility. It makes the roadway safe. So, and you see this. If you see an officer, you're probably going to start slowing down. So it's just instinctive for people to we got to slow down. There's an officer around. So me being visible, being around them, driving near them, gets people to be compliant. It could be me making a traffic stop and then talking to them, saying, "Hey, you need to slow down. This is not safe." Just a verbal warning, as we say. And then it could be, let me elevate it even higher. Let me give you a warning. Let me document this. Put it in writing that I'm stopping you for speeding. We need to slow down because it's not safe for you and other motorists. And then it could be, a ticket. But the goal is for every officer, should be the goal for every officer, is to get compliance, to make the roadway safer, but using the least amount of force or penalty or difficulty in a person's life. So again, just presence, talking, warnings, tickets, and then certainly, if need be, an arrest. But the goal is to try to get the person to be compliant and understanding with the least amount.
Do you have an opinion on undercover cops then, or ones that have unmarked cars?
So we have some of those. I mean, the Highway Patrol has some of those. It's relatively new to the patrol. And when you say unmarked, and we have unmarked vehicles that have no markings at all, them are typically administrators, usually upper command staff. And why they drive those vehicles is because they're trying to get somewhere. They're to and from meetings. They're very task-oriented. They're not typically making traffic stops, so they don't need the markings typically, because they're not usually making those enforcements, making those stops. If they see something, they're calling, "Give me a unit over here to make this stop." So they're not typically marked up because there's not typically needed. But then we do have some, what I think a lot of people refer to as ghost marking vehicles, so very faint markings. Those vehicles, we have some Dodge Challengers that are in Metro in the Wichita, Kansas City, Topeka area. There's one in Salina. We have those vehicles, and it's relatively new to the Highway Patrol, but we've seen great value in that because people often are doing things when officers are not around, but when we can be around and they not know that we're around, we'll be able to capture, identify, and
catch them in the act.
And deal with those individuals that have been putting themselves, but more so putting others at risk, and maybe getting them to be accountable to the way they're driving.
Right.
So, it's the decision of the upper command staff. They made the decision. We have those ghost-marked vehicles, and they're out there actively making traffic stops. And for the motorists out there that are wanting us to be active in making the roadway safer, well, this is one way we're doing that. And with all moments, we're always, evaluating, listening, trying to be good stewards of what Kansans want. And it seems to me that Kansans are wanting that. They want safer roadways. They want fatalities to be brought down. And if at any point Kansans, the majority of Kansans, say, "Man, we don't like that," then I'm sure the Highway Patrol will be listening to that and accommodating, adjusting to that. But it's always important for us to be evaluating things, testing new things, and seeing what makes a difference, because fatalities are going up.
But you guys also pay attention to the public's opinion on a lot of stuff.
We should be,
especially
in every
with
way.
more being active on social media. People like you that are out there and on Twitter all the time and stuff. You're seeing these people that are probably throwing stuff at you left and right. Some good, some bad. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And do you ever take any of that into account, or you just kind of brush it off?
There's always negativity. There's always haters. There's always ankle biters.
On the internet,
everywhere. The reality is I'm going to be me, and I'm going to be proud of who I am and what I do. And that comes with growth in life, I think. Certainly in the beginning of my career, maybe I didn't have that. None of us do, I think. But then you get to a point of life where it's like, you know what? It's important that I be the real me, the real person, and that those individuals that don't understand what I'm trying to accomplish on social or the task that I'm doing in this uniform, well, maybe I can bridge to them. Maybe I can make them understand what I'm trying to accomplish through social media, or with me just talking and being real and honest and personable to them, to make them understand. There's a man, in today's world, there's this a very divided, cliquish world. It seems like we're in a very silo world, and we only talk to people that are like-minded. It's important that I am always a good listener and trying to listen to other people's experiences to be a better servant to them, and that means listening to those that don't like me, and to be able to understand their viewpoints to be better for them. I should not just serve the people that like me, but to serve everybody, and that includes people that have different views of maybe what I think. I always think about this. There's people that I make traffic stops on, or I come across, and man, I'll tell you, you can just tell that they do not like me, don't like this uniform, don't like law enforcement. And in those moments, what I always think of is, well, what have they experienced? What's going on in their world? What challenges or what moments have they had with law enforcement that could have given them a negative context, a negative view of law enforcement? And I always think of how, maybe the moment that I have with them can change the narrative a little bit. Maybe I can get them to understand that whatever they experienced in times past, that was then. But that's not now, and that's not me, and that's not Trooper Ben.
Right.
And maybe at the end, they walk away and they say, man, I don't really like law enforcement, but I do like Trooper Ben.
I love that attitude.
Yeah.
That's the best way to go about it.
Yeah, like, hey, you view others for themselves, but I hope that you and anybody that interacts with me views me and judges me for me and how I operate, how I live, what I do in this uniform, and what I do out of this uniform, and that people view me for me. So giving people some space and some grace and understand we all walk in different paths and different experiences, and for that, hey, let me be a good listener and see if I can do a better job for them.
Definitely. And that's why we appreciate you doing an interview like this and, a laid-back environment.
It is.
Because we get to know who you actually are.
Yeah.
You can sit here and talk one-on-one with me, There's nothing that you're hiding behind, and not that you hide behind anything, but to get that experience to listen to you just talk and explain what you're doing, who you are, what your journey's been, that's super important, so I really appreciate it.
It's, I think in law enforcement, and I mean, the reality, I think in law enforcement, officers have to recognize that it's important that we're trying to be real, honest, and open. We need to be vulnerable at times to let our guard down, not safety-wise, but let our guard down and being able to be open and being challenged and be able to listen and not be so quick to rebuttal back on things. You learn a lot from a lot of other people when you just simply have a listening ear compared to a quick tongue to respond back. Yeah. And at least for what I've experienced, it's benefited me. It's benefited the way I serve and the way I think people view me.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think your social media presence alone gives people a better view of what the state trooper program is, or even the police officers as if you want to group them together.
I hope so. I mean, when I got on social media years ago, I had a couple goals I wanted to accomplish. I mean, I was new into the position of being the public information officer for North Central Kansas, for Troop C is what we call it. And I just found myself having challenges delivering the messages of information that I needed to get to the public, to the media, about roadway conditions, safety messages, whatever it is. And I was like, I got this Twitter account, and I've had it for many years. Let me just take my Twitter page and let's rebrand it. Let's make it work-oriented. Let's start tweeting from it and seeing what I can do from it. And I'll tell you, within a short amount of time, I quickly realized this is a very, very powerful platform.
Man, it's crazy the growth that you had.
It's crazy in the beginning. And I think in the beginning, it was because so many people did not have access to officers. They maybe wanted to ask questions. They wanted to have that access to be able to connect with officers, but they didn't have a way to do so. Mm-hmm. So being on social gives a person to have some ownership in me a little bit and be able to have a Trooper Ben in their back pocket to ask questions. And I get that. I mean, I have kids. It's entertaining to me, but I'll have like high school students that follow me on Twitter, and I'll get a direct message from them, and it's like, "Hey, Trooper Ben, can you answer this question? We at the lunchroom right now." And you just know that like the scenario is that they're sitting in the cafeteria, they're eating lunch, and somebody has a question about a law, and they're like, "Well, let's just ask Trooper Ben."
They're with their friends, and they're like, "Hey, you might answer us."
Yes, and they're like, "Let's ask Trooper Ben," and I'll get a direct message, and I'll reply back. I do that all the time.
Yeah.
And I think having the public know that they have access to me and they can have some ownership in me and to be real, honest, and open is important. And I don't know, maybe that's why I've gotten so much growth in it, because I just try to be me. I try to smile.
Authentic.
I try to be that. I mean, the reality is certainly there's some things that I have to be hesitant in speaking about with the job that I have, but I try to get as close to that line as I can.
Yeah.
And let people understand the great joys I have in this uniform, as well as the great difficulties I have in this uniform. And hopefully in doing so, people align with me. And then they maybe become advocates of me and of this uniform. And then they are champions for me. Mm-hmm. And that's really what I hope, is that they can understand the job that I have. So.
Yeah, and it's worked out so well for you. It's such a new thing, too, the social media thing. Well, it's I don't know how long you've had a Twitter account. I'm gonna guess maybe a decade at the most.
Yeah, I started in 08.
08.
08
okay.
is when I first created account, which I think in the beginning was like, what's this Twitter thing?
Yeah.
Tweeter, what are you
was
doing?
all
I know.
new.
I know. You're like, how do you do this? What is it? I better get an account just in case this becomes something.
Mm-hmm.
And I really, in the beginning, really didn't do too much with it. And then in 2013 or so is when I was like, hey, let's start tweeting. Let's start doing something for work. And that's when it really started taking off.
Yeah, and so many have followed you too. I see all
Yes.
sorts of troopers on there now, and they'll have, Trooper Kate, Trooper Jake, Trooper whatever,
Yeah. There is. I mean, it's crazy how many followers I have now, but there's so many other agencies now across the nation that have mirrored in some ways
Yeah.
what we do in Kansas. So there's Trooper John or Trooper Steve down in Florida, Trooper Bob in South Carolina. There's
Yeah.
other troopers that they've connected or they've recognized, man, there's value in what Ben's doing in Kansas. Let's try to recreate that, mimic that in our state and see how it works. And they've seen the benefits of it as well.
Isn't that amazing? Do you sit back sometimes and think like, wow, look at this little
Yeah.
ripple that I created across social media? That's crazy.
Yeah, it feels really, really good. I mean, it feels good to I don't know, to realize maybe the impact I have outside of the state. I mean,
Yeah.
I want people, like I said, to have ownership in me, but I want people to have ownership and knowledge of me outside of Kansas as well. I want people to know this uniform, this patch, and be like, that's Trooper Ben, that's
Right.
our trooper, even though they might live in Alaska or something like that. And then these other officers and troopers in other states, man, they reach down to me. They send me direct messages. I FaceTime them frequently. I FaceTime a lot of troopers and officers across the
Really?
nation. Yes, just to like, they'll ask me questions about, hey, I got this going on. What do you think? And now, hey, let's talk. So I'll just, from my patrol car, FaceTime them. Let's FaceTime. Let's talk about what's going on. And again, I think it makes me a better officer because it gives me a chance to learn some of the things they're experiencing, and maybe I can adjust off of what I'm doing and do a better job for Kansans. And in return also maybe make an impression on other states and move them to what I believe is good law enforcement in today's world. We're a very connected world. I mean, social media is for right or for wrong, present, it's visible, it's there, it's not going away. So let's get there, let's get on it and be active with it.
Yeah. Extremely connected world now. I mean,
Yeah.
Before social media, to interact with the trooper, you're either pulled over or you knew one
I know.
personally, right?
That's right. You're right.
So to see you now and to be able to see what you're saying and interact with you, it's just such a new thing. People never had that before.
You're right. I mean, just this moment here. I mean, how did you reach out to me? You reached
Twitter.
out to me through Twitter. You
Yeah.
sent me a direct message. You followed me. I followed you back. And then the doorway opens up for an opportunity for conversations to develop. And that's what happens with social, is that you bridge the distance to people far and wide, not just in our state, but other states and other countries. And there's people that I interact with all around the world now.
Yeah.
So it's exciting.
Yeah.
It's really, really cool.
And to be honest, I didn't think I was going to get a response from you.
Really?
I was like, well, I know that you interact with people, but I figured you'd look at me and be like, well, who's this little peon?
No,
podcast?
no.
Everybody's got a
No.
podcast now,
No,
right?
I tell you what, everybody does have podcasts, it seems like, but
It's a new
it's good.
thing. to
It's
have.
good though. It's
Yeah.
good. I try to have an open door. I try to have, for me, I guess another thought I have with the way I do this job is that if somebody's going to open the door and invite me in, it's my goal to walk through that door and accommodate that person as best I can with the ask that they're asking. So with your ask, hey, let's try to figure out make this work because it benefits me.
Yeah.
It gives me a chance to tell my story, maybe to move people to say, I want to be like that. I want to join the Kansas Highway Patrol. I want to have the joys that he has in what he does, and so this gives me that opportunity to maybe tell my story and make people realize that there's a path for them within being a first responder within the Kansas Highway Patrol, and maybe recognize that, man, there's great things you can experience in this uniform or further.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest goals on this podcast actually is to highlight those things because I know quite a few of my listeners out there are probably people that are younger or looking to change careers or something and they don't really know the ins and outs of it. So speaking of your story, let's just start from the beginning here. How did Trooper
Are we getting
Ben-
started now?
We're just now getting started, folks.
I know.
Let's start the podcast.
That's right.
Record.
I
Ding.
know. That's exactly it.
So
Yes.
how did Trooper Ben come to be?
So I am from Michigan. the military is where it brought me to Kansas. So I was a Fort Riley guy, a hood rat, a military guy.
Army
Guy at Fort Riley. So I know. Is that not a good thing?
I'm Air Force.
Are you really?
Yep.
I'm an Army guy. So Fort Riley military, 3-year enlistment brought me to Kansas. When I was in Fort Riley, I had interest in being in the military for a very long time. I had plans or goals to retire from the military. But then, as I say, I met a Kansas woman down in Aggieville, like most military
down
guys.
In Aggieville,
yeah,
huh?
Of course. That's Fort Riley guys go down
Right
to Aggieville.
on, I know.
So down in Aggieville, and I met her, and she was going to K-State. So we started dating, and she told me from the very beginning of us sort of courting each other that she wasn't leaving Kansas. And I think at that moment is when I became a Kansan, is because I realized I'm staying in Kansas. She's not leaving Kansas. I'm going to stay in Kansas.
She's not giving me a choice here. So
I know.
either,
That's it.
Yep.
So I made the decision at that point, hey, what is the best path for my life? And for me, while the military was exciting and interested me, she interested me more. And I decided to get out of the military, started looking for other alternate career paths. And, when I was in the Army, I was a tank crew member, an Abrams tank crew member, 19 kilo. And you can't really drive tanks in the civilian world. I learned quickly.
Doesn't translate the best.
Doesn't really work that well. So I was like, what's the next thing? The next thing seemed to be law enforcement, seemed to be a good fit. And started applying for a wide variety of different positions, the High Patrol being one, and applied, got on. So never been an officer before. The High Patrol is where I started my career.
Really?
And I've been with the High Patrol ever since.
Wow.
I know. So
what's the major differences between becoming Highway Patrol trooper versus becoming a normal police officer or a city police officer?
So, there's certainly differences. I mean, we're all law enforcement officers,
Yeah.
but I think the start point is what type of authority or what type of area you have authority in. So city officers, city limits. Deputies, county lines. So you get city limits, that's your playground, that's your sandbox, that's you get to be for city officers. Deputies, county lines, get bigger sandbox, bigger playground, bigger area to go work and do the things they need to do. And then there's state troopers, which are state lines. So I've got a big sandbox, a big playground to be in and do the things that I get to do anywhere in the state of Kansas. So there's that benefit of having the freedoms of all of Kansas. For the High Patrol, we are very roadway task oriented. So traffic, roadway crashes, interdiction work, human trafficking, criminal interdiction, things on our roadways are our focus point. When you think of a city officer and deputy, they can do the same, but their focus point, in addition to what we do, is domestics, homes, roadways, robberies, in town, residential type stuff. When we're not really residential home businesses type stuff. You don't see home and businesses on the interstate, so it's something we're disconnected to. We are very roadway type tasked. So while we're all officers and doing our thing, we just have a bigger swath of the state and sort of a different focal point.
Does it ever kind of piss off other officers? When
You said piss off. I wasn't expecting that. Okay, go ahead. No, never. Not at all.
When you're stepping in their territory, right? Like if I'm a small town cop and I'm like, what's Trooper Ben doing here?
I'm sure. Yeah,
I can take care of my own town.
That's funny. I'm sure they give us the stink eye. Like, what's he doing over here? No, honestly, I think that's funny. I think that we all recognize that there's enough work out there for everybody to take part of. And again, the goal is to make the roadway safer. So when I'm in town, I think of like Salina. When I'm rolling through Salina, I make a traffic stop, and I think the city officers are like, thanks for getting that, because they're very busy with other things.
Yeah.
And when there's a wreck in town, while it's probably generally theirs to handle, there's times where our troopers they'll clean that up, they'll take care of it, they'll work it in town. Why? Because city officers have other tasks that they're also burdened with. Hey, let's lighten the load. We work together with each other. We're partners with each other. We're all on the same team. We're all the same goal of making the roadways and making our community safer. So we just have different focal points, and we're on the same team. We don't try to piss each other off, as you said.
I just didn't know if, you're in Salina and they're like, oh,
get out of here.
Trooper Ben doesn't think I can handle my own city.
No, man. There are some wonderful city officers, deputies out there that do wonderful things that are very focused on their tasks. and they're very good at it. Their skill sets are amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Just the same as for the high patrol, we have our troopers that are very focused on our skill sets, and we work with each other. So, I'll give you an example. Like when a crash happens in town, if it's a significant crash with significant vehicles, maybe multiple fatalities, got hazmat or commercial motor vehicles, I think most commonly you'll see the city officers say, "Get a trooper over here." Can they get this? Can we get them over to work this thing because it's different, it's elevated, it's more significant because that's our world. But the same thing is if I'm on the interstate and I have a domestic, I could deal with a domestic. It's not my world. I don't deal with domestics that much. So I would probably be saying, hey, give me a deputy over here.
Yeah.
Can you roll a city officer over to help me with this? Because while I can navigate it, I'm not as efficient and in tune to navigate that world. So we certainly have our different skill sets. We rely on each other. Hey, we're calling it, get over here. I need your help on this one. Hey,
Gotcha.
Can you come over and help me on this? Because we're all trying to make things safer and better.
So when you work for the Highway Patrol, are there any limitations on where you live in the state? Like, will it affect me if I live in a certain area or if I want to stay in this area? Is there any preference on where to live?
No, I mean, the Highway Patrol, when you first came on the patrol, they're going to, through the hiring process, they're going to ask you to name 3 counties, or they've typically done this. Things always change, but they've done this for all of my career. They're going to ask you to name 3 counties you'd like to be stationed in. And then more than likely in today's world, they're going to station you in one of those 3 counties. So when I came on, I asked for Saline, Dickinson, and Gary County. They're the 3 counties. I think it's funny now today because when they asked me name 3, I could only name 3 counties at the time. In Kansas, I didn't know any other counties because I drove between Salina and Fort Riley, those 3 counties, that's it. If they would have asked me name 4, I'd been like, anywhere else after that, I don't know. But I named those 3, and I got McPherson County, so 1 county south of Saline. So I wasn't the 3, but I was right next to 1. So it worked out. In today's world, they're going to ask you, you have to live within the county you're assigned. And then when you come to work, when you walk out of your house, get in your patrol car and get on the radio and say, I'm working, you can go anywhere you want. Now, we sort of stay in our normal areas because if I wanted to go to Kansas City and go work, well, what's the benefit of that? It leaves my local area vacant if something occurs. And there's troopers up in Kansas City. So we're not going to drive anywhere. What we do is we get on our computers. We can see where other troopers are at in today's world. We have a little map, and it shows little patrol cars driving around in real time. And we can get a feel of, hey, there's nobody up in this area. Let me go work that area today. Or just the opposite. Man, there's everybody up in this area. But then you realize, the K-State game's on. Let me get up there also because there's a lot of opportunity for tickets, accidents, arrests, and things. So I'm going to get there and help. So we just have the freedoms to go wherever we want, and the High Patrol is going to station you in one of the 3 counties you typically ask for in the beginning.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But you do basically have free reign then when you're on patrol.
Yeah,
to do whatever you want.
Yeah, that's one of the benefits of being a state trooper is that we are. I heard somebody say this not too long ago, and I was like, man, that's a perfect belief for how they said it. I mean, the High Patrol, we are report makers. Compared to a lot of agencies, they're report takers. So report takers or report makers. The reality of the difference of the two is a lot of agencies, police departments, sheriff's departments, they're report takers, meaning that something occurs and they've got to get over there and they've got to take that report. But for troopers, we're report makers, meaning we are self-initiated. We go in and get after what we want to get after. And our day is as busy as we want to make it. We do get dispatched by our dispatch center from time to time for a crash, a shooting, a chase, a manhunt, crash, whatever it is. But the vast majority of our days are us going to work and freelancing and trying to figure out what we want to get into. And what's nice about that is if you want to be the person that's really active on distracted drivers, man, get out of there. Go at it and tear it up and make the roadway safer. If you want to be the person that's passionate about drunk drivers, get at it. If you want to be the person about interdiction work, go at it. If you want to be like me, which was really safety, preventative speaking from the beginning of my career, hey, get at it. Go start and talk to schools and get active. So I was doing that from the very beginning. And I like that. The High Patrol allows you in your career path to start excelling from the very moment you graduate from the academy to start being active in the areas you want to be active in.
Yeah, they let you kind of grow in the direction that you want to and make it what you will.
It is, yes.
That's cool. That's pretty appealing to people out there probably that are interested, you know?
It is. I mean, it's nice. I mean, there's, I don't know, just from the moment you get out there on the field. I mean, we go through our academy. Our academy is 23 weeks long. So that in itself is notable because down in Yoder, down by Hutchinson, the Kansas Law Enforcement Training Center, most officers that go down there to get certified as an officer, I think their academy is 14 weeks, 13 weeks, 14 weeks. We go an additional like 10 more weeks longer. Not that we have to, but we do because we want to make sure that when our troopers finish the academy, they are well prepared to handle the job without any type of supervision. And then whenever they graduate, they have 77 days with a training officer. And then from that point on, when they're finished, they're out there doing whatever they want. And they really get the freedoms to make their career, their day, the way they want to make it.
So if you want to join Highway Patrol, you can expect to go 10 weeks longer in the academy than a typical police officer?
Yeah. So, and let me qualify that a little bit. That's for when you're going to the Kansas Law Enforcement Training Center compared to our academy, which is 10 more weeks longer, or about 10 more weeks longer. Now, Wichita PD has their own academy. I'm not sure how long their academy is. Topeka has their own. I believe there's a couple of agencies in Kansas City that also have their own agencies. They're all accredited. They're all sort of overview by KU. KU sort of manages all of them, make sure we meet certain accreditations, certain requirements. But for us, we go longer because we want to make sure that those walking out are well prepared and very, very in tune to the tasks of what a trooper is going to be doing.
So the easy answer would be that it's going to vary depending on what you want to do in law enforcement.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a person that's thinking about going into law enforcement, first step would be, where's your niche? What's your thing? What do you want to get into? I mean, if you really want to get into residential homes, in town, community policing, then maybe that's more of a police department. If you want to have sort of the world of really roadway work, but also that community policing, maybe that's deputy type stuff. And if you want to be really roadway tasked and just that, then you're talking about the Kansas Highway Patrol.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is, what's your niche? What's your path? And trying to identify that as early as you can is probably pretty important.
Are there different opportunities as far as growth in your career when it comes to being a trooper versus being a city police officer and things like that?
Well, never been a city officer, so I'm not sure exactly all their opportunities, but I can speak to what the Highway Patrol provides. So when you join the Highway Patrol, you're going to be at least a road trooper. You're going to be a roadway guy. I mean, you're at the bottom of basically the career path, so you're going to be a trooper. And you're going to maintain that status for 5 years working the road. So you're going to be a road trooper, working the road, working wrecks, making arrests, responding to things on the roadway. After 5 years, you become a master trooper. Now, a master trooper is just a different title change, but you then start getting the opportunities to start going into other different career paths within the patrol. Matter of fact, that can even occur even earlier. Sometimes at 3 years, you can start getting into other things. So if it's, man, I want to be a dog handler. I really want to get into canine type stuff.
That would be cool.
Yeah, and then you work the road for a couple years, and you gain the foundational things of being a state trooper, and then after doing so, and you've really rounded yourself off to be experienced in that world, hey, there's a dog position that's come up, and then you apply for that internally within our agency, and if you get it, you become a dog handler. Or there's our pilots, or our interdiction.
Pilots?
Yeah, we have pilots. So that's one thing. That's
What?
pretty notable, a little top tier for the Kansas Highway Patrol is that we are the only agency in all of Kansas, that provides air support, law enforcement air support for all of Kansas. So
that's news to me.
yeah. So if you are Sheriff's Department, Police Department, anybody, Wildlife and Parks, you need a law enforcement helicopter or plane, you're calling the Kansas Highway Patrol.
Really?
There's nobody else in Kansas. Wichita PD used to have their own air support, and Kansas City used to have one, but they've both dissolved. So we are the only one. So now when there's something that occurs, a manhunt, a shooting, a chase, a crash, whatever it is,
OJ driving down the highway,
anything, they're calling us, and we're the ones that fly out of Wichita, Topeka, or Hayes. And that's a wonderful career path, honestly, because for us, for the Highway Patrol, our pilots are from internal. So if you want to be a pilot for the Highway Patrol, you're going to be a trooper first. And then when that opportunity opens up and we bid it out internally with an email like, hey, we need a pilot. Anybody want to be a pilot? You interview for that. And if you're selected, if you have a license, great. You're going to just move right into the role. But if you don't have a license like me, if I'm picked to be a pilot, they'll send you to flight school. They'll pay for everything
Nice.
to be a pilot. So we have had several of our troopers that have had interest in becoming pilots. They don't have their license or anything like that. Nothing to be a pilot.
Yeah.
They've always wanted to do that. They aspired to do that. And then the Highway Patrol needs a pilot. And like, man, we need somebody. That individual, that trooper has applied. The Highway Patrol interviewed several and says, man, we really like you, Jesse. You're the one. We want you to be a pilot for us. And okay, we're going to send you to flight school. And you're going to go to flight school. You're going to start learning everything. And then, okay, now you're flying for us.
Wow.
And that's fixed wing or rotary for helicopter. So they fly out of Wichita, Kansas City, Topeka, and in addition, we fly the governor and their dignitaries. So we fly the executive jet anywhere in Kansas or further when needed. It's one of our troopers or retiree troopers that fly that executive.
You're flying Laura Kelly around
the
state?
Yeah.
No
Me
kidding.
personally, no. I mean, I've never been in it. I've been in a helicopter plane at the High Patrol, but not when she's in it. But
wow.
But we do that. We fly all over and do those things when needed. So it's pretty cool.
So the executive plane is basically the Air Force One for the Kansas governor.
Kansas Force One. I don't
Kansas
know.
Force
We got to
One.
think of some cool name for that. I know.
It's not as big of a plane, is it?
No, it's not.
No.
But it's pretty cool. I mean, it's neat to know that a trooper is the one that's providing that service.
Is crazy. I never knew that. I never knew you guys flew at all, actually.
Yeah. So we fly all over. And, think about all the critical calls and different things. So if there's a crash and we need... And if it's a significant crash, we'll have the helicopter or plane take aerial photos of the scene to help document evidence of what took place. A manhunt, certainly we got the flare and the spotlight coming up above the spotlight.
You got that white Bronco cruising down the highway.
You keep on referencing that. But
that's what I think of every time you talk about a helicopter following.
The reality is some people in your audience are like, what's going on with this white Bronco? And they're like, I don't know. You're dating yourself a little bit there.
It's I do.
I know. But... we've got that, purpose of doing it. Another thing we do for the High Patrol, and people don't realize this, we have a thing we do called blood runs across the state of Kansas.
Blood runs.
So blood runs. So it's something we've done all of the High Patrol, all of the existence of the patrol. So when people need blood, when there's a significant surgery, or there's been a crash and person is losing blood, and that hospital needs blood, a certain type of blood, and they're running out from what their hospital provides at the time. They'll call the Kansas High Patrol and say, we need blood. Go to this hospital, pick it up from there, and run it up to this hospital. So troopers run blood across the state all the time.
Wow.
We call them blood runs. So they'll coordinate, our dispatch will coordinate with a series of troopers. So let's say something coming from Wichita needs to get to Salina. Salina had a surgery, Salina had a crash, something bad, we need a certain type of blood. They will notify us, we'll do a blood run and run it, lights and sirens, we'll relay it all the way to Salina, or if need be, because it's needed now, and we will fly it. So we'll get a trooper, pick it up at the hospital, drive it to the airport. Our aircraft or helicopter will pick it up and fly it to wherever it needs to get to make a difference for a person that's needing that blood right now. So we do blood runs. And in addition to that, man, we're going to really wow you here too. It's like, what's going on with that? We call them still blood runs, but we'll run donated organs. So somebody that has passed away, and that organ is it's identified as somebody that could be a donor for someone else across the state. So I've ran 1039's lights and sirens. I've ran lights and sirens eyeballs across the state in my career. Somebody needs eyeballs. Yes, it's like somebody's passed, and they were a donor, and that. Those eyeballs have been gathered, and there's a donor somewhere across the state. We need to get them over there. So we'll 1039 them. We'll run them lights and sirens across the state.
That's incredible.
So organs, we'll do that. And in addition, this is another what? Really? You guys do that? Animals that is believed to be rabid with rabies. So if there's a situation where somebody's been bit, and then we believe this animal's got rabies, if that animal is captured, we will run that deceased animal to a certain location where they can test it for rabies. So we'll blood run it or lights and sirens it across the state to get it somewhere, to get it really quick and checked, so we can then take the actions needed for the individual that's been bitten.
But you're not the one that kills it.
No.
You're not pulling up.
Honestly, maybe we do at times. I don't know. But
you're pulling up and walking out.
No, I've never done that. In the moments that I've had to run those moments, it's like, hey, here's the package, get it, and get to the next destination. And the one that stands out to me, honestly, as awkward and as like, oh, are you serious? It was like a dead skunk. Yeah. I was like, oh, I got to run this dead skunk across the state, lights and sirens, because we believe it's rabid. And we're like, okay, let's go. And you're like, the things you like never thought of.
Never would have thought when that trooper flies by you on the highway that he's carrying kidneys or a skunk or something in there.
But right? We do those things. And I often think that, when I'm running blood, the public probably thinks that we're going to a crash or we're going after somebody or whatever. There's a chase or something like that. But no, man, what we're doing is we're running, often, most frequently, it is blood. We're trying to get blood to somebody that's near death.
Yeah.
and we're trying to get there to maintain a life that's maybe about to be lost. And I tell you, I know that when I've picked up blood, it's like we got to get going. We got to get going. Sometimes it's like this needs to happen fast. One of our past troopers who died, actually, we've had 10 troopers killed in the line of duty. One of them died in a blood run. He was running blood to a hospital. A mother that had given birth lost a lot of blood, and they needed more blood. So that trooper picked up blood from one hospital, running across the state, dropped it off, and then quickly the hospital realized we need more. And he ran it again, and during that was involved in a crash and died.
Wow.
But just one of the things we do. I mean, it's not people think officers, tickets, accidents, arrests, but man, there's more things than just that we're doing out there than just tickets, accident, and arrests.
That's amazing. I never would have guessed.
Yeah.
But that is such a cool aspect of it. I mean, the fact that you have the opportunity to do that,
Yeah.
when you think about it, which we normally don't think about, like how's the blood getting transferred from here to there or whatever, but it's usually somebody like you that can use lights and sirens.
We do.
Because nobody else really has that ability,
We do. I do. I mean, it seems like, it certainly varies throughout the year, but man, it's something I've done many, many times in my career.
Wow, that's amazing. So you've had 10 officers killed in the line of duty.
We have had 10, yeah. The last
some
one.
of those are from criminals that get involved in like a gunfight or something.
So we've had some that have been shot. I think of down in the Turnpike, we had one of our troopers shot down there. They made a traffic stop, walked down into the ditch and shot and killed by the individual. We've had an officer that was killed at a bank robbery in the Topeka area where the robbery was occurred. Our troopers showed up, and then the bank robber individual shot out and shot one of our troopers and killed him. Mm-hmm. So we've had some individuals shot and killed. We've had some of our troopers that have killed in the line of duty in traffic crashes. So there's those two amendments. The last one we've had killed, Dean Goodhart, in 1995, was struck and killed hit by a motorist. It's why we have the move over law, actually. So when you think about the law that requires motorists to move over and give first responders room to work on the side of the road, it is because of Dean Goodhart, because of his death. His widow, Marilyn Goodhart, was an advocate years ago to testify and speak with legislators that we need to have a law that requires motorists to move over and slow down and give first responders room. Her husband, Dean, was on I-70, stepped off a semi during a truck inspection, and a college student, at the time didn't need to move over. Nothing required that, but that college student maintained the lane, and when our trooper stepped off the semi, he got hit and he died.
Wow.
So
it's amazing that you need to pass laws like that, because you would think common courtesy, if somebody's pulled over on the side of the road and there's obviously movement and stuff, it's not just an abandoned car, you would think common courtesy, you get over, give them space, but there's a bunch of idiots out there on the roads, and it amazes me every day. I mean, I have a long commute to work, so I see it firsthand every day on the highways, the amount of people that you wouldn't believe. I mean, you can.
Yeah.
But.
See, I have the benefit of stopping those individuals. You just look at them like, dang, that person right there needs to be stopped.
That person's an idiot.
But to me, it's like, that person's an idiot. Let me talk to that person.
Yeah.
So I have the benefits. But isn't that the case? I mean, it is crazy, the things that we're seeing out there. I see it. I have the benefits of making those stops. But for you, the public sees it too. They're like, man, look at that person over there. They need to be stopped.
Yeah.
And it seems to be more common now. There's more of those foolish drivers all around us. And we see that again with fatalities going up in our state and across our nation.
The one that drives me the most crazy is when we're in a big line and there's like a traffic jam going on, and everybody obviously is backed up for a long ways. Mm-hmm. You can see clearly ahead of you that there's traffic, and you got people flying around you in these open lanes that are clearly probably blocked off in the, and they'll drive all the way up there and then turn on their blinker and then push their way in.
Force their way in.
You know that everybody in that line is like, oh, you.
I know. And honestly, there's a sign typically prior to that moment that says do not pass.
Yeah.
So when I see those type of things, usually what I'll do is if I can, and I have the opportunity, the freedom to go and work the road or make some traffic stops, I will sit or be near that sign. And so when I see people like going up, passing everybody else, trying to get the last minute up in the front and get in, I said, wait a minute, the sign says do not pass. You're passing people. It says move over well in advance of that. So I'll make a traffic stop and talk to them about it. And again, trying to get the least amount of enforcement needed to get them to be compliant. So if it's just me talking or giving them warning, certainly that's the goal.
Yeah.
So,
do you ever tell them, like, do you not realize that all those people back there
know?
are cursing in their cars right now?
No, honestly, the reality is they know it, because the people passing by now with me on the shoulder talking to them are usually like honking thumbs up, thank you. I have that happen all the time, man. It scares me because
Go Trooper Ben.
I'm telling you, it scares me because that's what happens. I'll be on a traffic stop for a vehicle that had been going fast or something. And you know that vehicle like blew by everybody the last several miles. So I've got them on the shoulder and I'm talking to them about speeding, whatever it is. And all those motorists that had just been passed are like, yes, he got caught.
Yeah.
And they will at times drive by me, honk, and be like, yeah. And it scares me because I don't expect it. I just get this yell and I'm like, what's going on? Like, it's just somebody that's glad that I made a
superhero in that moment, right?
It's like, I'm doing good today. I'm doing good today. So, yes.
That's a good day when you get cheered on by
I
somebody,
know, man.
You know?
There's a lot of that at times when people are like, thanks for getting that vehicle stopped, because they just passed by everybody. So it's fun.
Right.
It's fun.
So, you know, people, obviously the world is changing. The culture is changing. Marijuana is getting legalized all over the place in the States, right?
Yep.
Not in Kansas yet.
Not yet, no.
But is there a change in attitude that troopers and officers in general have had towards marijuana in possession, or?
I think that as I started, we always need to be good listeners. Try to make sure we are understanding what the public wants. The question you're asking me, though, is probably bigger than me.
Yeah.
And the reality is that it's up to legislators and elected officials to decide what is best for our state, and it's important for those elected officials to be good listeners again to what Kansans want. The reality is that it's decided by those Kansans and elected officials decide what's going to occur, and then from there, we as officers start accommodating that new change if there is a change. So right now in Kansas, there's nothing that makes it legal. So medical marijuana, recreational marijuana in any form is illegal in the state of Kansas. Right. And if that changes, then our troopers will recognize that and we'll start to adjust to that.
You're just there to enforce it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to accommodate what Kansans and what legislators want. So until that time occurs is when we'll start making those changes and recognizing that there's an adjustment that needs to be made. But as of right now, it's not that way. You know, it's important that we're always listening, and I say that. It's always important that our agency is listening, trying to be in tune to what Kansans want, and hopefully Kansans speak to what they believe is best, and that's bigger than me. I am one individual. It's up for the voice of Kansans to decide what they think is going to be the way we operate moving forward. And hopefully when they make those decisions, they're really educating themselves. They're listening to the surrounding states that have made those changes and recognizing where the pitfalls are or the benefits are, whatever it is, to be prepared for what could be a significant change in our state.
Yeah, I'm sure it's difficult for you guys sometimes to manage, because I know there's city ordinances that pop up here and there that decriminalizes weed or whatever. And you might not know all of those. I don't know if
city ordinances are foreign to me because I deal with state statutes. So state statute.
So it doesn't matter to you.
No, city ordinances are nothing to me because I don't enforce city ordinances. So, you know, deputies and troopers enforce state statute, state law. Legislators create these laws or tweak them, adjust them. City ordinances are something that local governments can enact. And what occurs typically with city ordinances is that there's a baseline or there's a standard they have to meet, which typically mimics or mirrors what a state statute would be. But city ordinances can typically be more restrictive. And again, it's something I don't enforce. It's nothing I don't know any STO numbers, as they say. STO city ordinance. So I don't know those numbers. I don't enforce.
Too big for that. Doesn't matter.
Too big. I just deal with state statute. The state laws are what I deal with.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
that is funny. I mean, the world is changing.
It is.
Thing is, they're going to have to come up with a way probably to test for it on the spot, just like a breathalyzer in my mind.
You're right. And that's something that, the reality is I'm not sure how that's going to be applied yet. But,
I don't either.
But when that, when that is developing and that conversation is occurring in legislators right now, is that there'll be education and training that our officers, troopers will get on how to deal with that new world. So field sobriety tests, how do we, like right now when we got alcohol, we do breathalyzer tests and toxalyzer tests, we draw blood, we do certain things. How do we do that when it comes to THC or things in a person's system that could be maybe legal in some ways, and how does it apply? So the reality is impairment, and we don't want people impaired. So we need to make sure that, how do we measure that? And in alcohol, we have alcohol. I mean, people say this all the time. They say, don't drink and drive, but the reality is we do that in America. We go to Applebee's, we get something to drink, and then we drive.
Yeah.
The reality is we can't drink too much and drive.
Right.
And the way we define that in Kansas is nothing over .08. That is the line that has been drawn in Kansas. Anything above .08 is impaired. So we need to define what is it for THC, what is it for marijuana, and how do we measure that? How do officers enforce that? And that's something that, for me right now, is something I would say the word ignorant. I don't have that answer.
Right.
But I'm certain that our state and our agency and other agencies will be looking at what does Colorado do, what do other states do, how do they manage that, how do they measure that, how do they deal with impairment when it comes to that controlled substance.
I mean, you're still doing this field sobriety tests, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Which, one of my biggest questions with that, too, is if you know somebody's drinking or if you think they're drinking, why not just give them the breathalyzer straight up? Why do you still do the field sobriety test?
Well, I think it's a totality of everything. I mean, when you do a field sobriety test, usually what happens, the breathalyzer, the machine that we have them blow there, often that is at the very end. It's basically to qualify, hey, everything I've seen, everything I'm hearing, everything I'm smelling, I think it's leading to impairment. Okay, let's get to this final let's do this breath test. Yep, I'm seeing it now. Compared to imprinting on you with the breathalyzer on the side of the road, that there's alcohol, and you already get to the point of this person's impaired. Well, the reality is, as I said, we do drink and drive.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that we're at the unacceptable line, and we measure that, and we check that by doing field sobriety tests, by checking their eyes, by doing the one-legged, the walk and turn, and the one-legged stand.
Yeah.
Those 3 standardized
and
tests
the
that we
alphabet
do.
backwards.
Well, we do that at times, but not honestly. Well, let me back that up. Man, you caught me there.
Can't even do
I
that
never
sober.
do that.
Can't even do that sober.
I wasn't expecting that. No, not backwards. Never. I never do that.
Yeah.
But I do ask a person at times to say the alphabet, but what we'll do is it's sort of a task. We want them to do a task in a certain way, so it gives a chance for us to measure impairment. So we'll say, hey, can you tell me the alphabet starting with D and going to M?
Okay.
And then we'll see how they go and what'll happen. And D, E, F, G, get to M, and those continue going on. It's like, oh, wait a minute here. Maybe they're impaired a little bit. Something's going on there. Or maybe another thing we'll do with fine motor skills. We'll have a person, and we'll set some coins on the table, and we'll ask them, hey, can you pick up the quarter? And just to see if they have the fine motor skills to pick that quarter up, or did they recognize the quarter when they picked up the dime? So
or are
those
they seeing
things,
3/4?
Yeah, I know. Are they like, where's the quarter, and they keep on missing it?
Yeah.
So we maybe do those fine motor skills, but the standard things we do are the standard field sobriety test, which is the eyes, the walk and turn, and the one-legged stand. And then in addition to that, are maybe some other things that officers might do that might add to what they feel like is beneficial to give them some clarity on is this person impaired or not? They should be taken to jail or not.
That makes sense. And I like that approach too, because when you say it that way, like, we don't want to walk up and just stick this breathalyzer in your face and assume that you're already drunk.
Yeah, I mean,
you kind of gauge the situation and kind of get a feel for who they are, what they're doing.
It's a totality of everything. So I always think when I've made an arrest in times past for DUIs and it goes to court, I always ask the prosecuting attorney, the county attorney, they're like, hey, anything you think we need to do? And I always ask them, hey, at the very end, when you're done with me on the stand and you've asked me all the questions you want to ask me, I need you to ask me the following, which is, Trooper Ben Gardner, can you just tell me again why you made the arrest? Why did you make that arrest? And then what I do then from that point is I paint the entire picture, which is, well, I made the arrest because the individual was called in as being an erratic driver and a driver that could be impaired. In addition to that, I made the arrest because as I came up behind the vehicle and watched it, it was all over the road and it made me wonder, are they impaired? And then when I made a traffic stop, when I turned on my lights, it took them a long time to actually finally get pulled over and stop. And when they did pull over and stop, man, they dropped way off onto the shoulder and nearly rolled the vehicle.
Yeah.
And then when I walked up there and asked them to get out of their vehicle, they got out, but man, they used the vehicle to support themselves and gain balance. When I asked them to get their license, they went past their license 3 times in their wallet. And I really paint the picture of it's not just one thing that leads to make an arrest. It's the totality of everything, and painting the picture from the start all the way to the moment when you've made the decision this person needs to be taken to jail. It's not necessarily what I believe. It's what the public would say is, yeah, that person needs to go, because if they were here seeing everything that's occurred, they would say, yeah, that needs to take place.
Yeah, they would say that person is not safe on the roads.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's interesting. I always kind of wanted to know your guys' perspective on that stuff. You know, from just an average Joe, you never really know what's going through the cops'
I mean,
mind.
it is careers over beers, so we need to know these things.
Which we forgot to mention, we are not drinking beer today.
I know. You know, today
we're drinking coffee.
Coffee. That's one thing. Not that hey, you want to drink alcohol, you drink your alcohol. But one thing that I've never done this. I am almost 48 years of age. I've never had a drop of alcohol ever in my life.
Really?
I know. And being in the military, I'm gonna tell you what, that's
crazy.
That's quite a goal.
Hanging out in Aggieville.
I know
no alcohol,
all that. I've
right?
never had any alcohol in any type of form,
That's amazing.
in any way in all of my life. You know, everybody's got their thing. It's something I just never did and never do.
Yours is caffeine.
But I drink coffee all the time now and water.
Yeah. Well, that's probably healthier for you.
It's
That's
good.
For sure.
It's good for me. It's good.
It's also better for your image as Trooper Ben.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to be slinging down the booze.
I know.
At the bar.
I'll tell you what, people know me when I'm off duty too, so they're like, "That's Trooper Ben over there."
Exactly,
and if I was
yeah.
tipping them back, you know, slurred speech, you're like, "Dang, Trooper Ben," but you'll never find me like that.
Yeah, to each their own, man. To each their own. I'm a big
That's
believer
right.
in that.
That's right, absolutely.
The idea for this podcast was I just kind of like to get people in an environment where it feels relaxed, like we're just having a normal conversation, and that's what I normally do at the bar. So I kind of brought that here to the podcast. Yes. But I drink whatever the guest drinks, obviously.
So what is your drink of flavor? What is your thing? What do you like of beer? You're a Zima guy in times past. You're like, can I get a Zima? Do they even make Zimas anymore?
They actually did start making Zimas recently.
See, you're like, man, they're making them again.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, a little zinger right there.
No, I like bourbon quite a bit.
Do you?
But I also just drink regular beer too, just like Bud Light, Coors Light, whatever. I'm not very picky.
Is it so? When you have people in here, what's the drink? Like, is most
whatever
people
they want.
Beer? I know, but is there like, oh, just give me a Bud Light, give me a Budweiser?
A lot of them are just regular beers.
Just
a lot of them are
something simple.
craft beers now because that's a big thing.
Yeah,
microbreweries are popping up all over, becoming popular. So, I'd say not very often people want to drink hard liquor.
Hey, each of their own.
Exactly.
Yep.
But I know cops like their coffee too.
Man, it's something that I frequently drink, and honestly, not that we're needing to accept gratuity. I mean, gratuity, free stuff. The High Patrol sort of frowns upon that. We shouldn't be accepting it, and we typically don't. But man, there's many times now today when I go into the gas station, I try to pay for my coffee, and they're like, "You're good." And I'm like, dang, I can't, you can't
That's
pay.
awesome.
Or I go up there and somebody else, like through the drive-thru at McDonald's, I'll try to pay for my coffee, and I get up there and they're like, oh, the guy in front of you paid. That happens all the time now. It shows the support that there is across Kansas, and I think in other areas too, of Kansans wanting to support law enforcement officers. I see it all the time. I frequently say this. I see this too. I mean, people will say to me all the time, man, I could never go into law enforcement. I could never do what you do. I hear that all the time in today's world. And I always push back to that now is the best time to go in law enforcement. And it's for moments like that in the beginning of my career, when I first started out, very rarely would someone come up to me and say, hey, can I pray for you? Or very rarely would someone come up to me and say, thank you for what I do. Very rarely would someone pay for my coffee, but in today's world, that happens all the time, constantly,
That's
continuously,
a good sign.
All the time.
And you're part of that, probably.
Well,
right?
It's nice to know that people recognize the difficulties, but also appreciate the service that first responders provide. And just a simple gesture of somebody saying, hey, I got that for you, you're taken care of, don't worry about that coffee, is a little nod, a little indicator like, thanks for what you do.
Right.
And often it's an individual, very often, that person doesn't even want recognition. You go up there to pay and it's done. And it's like, who is
An
it?
anonymous act of
Yes,
kindness.
it happens
Yep.
all the time. So just to realize that, I don't think people realize that. They see other narratives on radio, television, and news that says, man, I couldn't go into law enforcement, it's a terrible time. But there's a narrative out there that I don't think people are seeing, hearing and witnessing, that is what I experience all the time, of people thanking me, man, people coming up to me that don't know me at all, and they're like, hey, can I just pray for you? And they want to put a hand on me. Can I just pray for you right now for your safety?
That's an incredible
and I'm
feeling.
like, sure, let's do that.
Yeah.
So it's a good time.
Wow.
It's a good time.
Well, that doesn't sell on the news, though. That's why people never see that, right?
Yeah, I think that's,
They want you to think that everybody wants to defund the police now.
The fear and different things out there. I just know, I mean, I can speak to what I experience, and what I experienced a lot of support of people that want to show that they appreciate what we do out there. There's times it's very difficult out there in what we do with, not to bring this down, but man, I mean, just dealing with death notifications, dealing with working fatality crashes, the things that we see as first responders is uncommon and unnatural, and it's difficult, and it weighs on you, and it's a burden at times of what you have to manage.
Definitely.
In a career. But having the public support you, not completely balances it out, but it does lighten the burden a little bit to realize, man, there's people that have your interests, your concern, your safety, your mindset in their mind. Are they doing good? Is that trooper doing good? Is that officer doing good? Is that EMS person doing good from the things they're dealing with out there?
Well, most people understand that you are dealing with people in the worst periods of their lives.
Yeah.
Though, I mean, when you roll up to an accident or when you roll up to something that you get a call for, those people are experiencing something that could be the worst thing ever they've experienced in their entire life.
Yeah.
And you're the one that has to maintain, being calm and trying to assess the situation correctly.
Yeah.
And that's an extremely hard thing to do. Most people don't have to do that ever.
Yeah. It's grace, giving people grace or space to work through those difficult moments. Realizing that the things that I'm rolling in on or responding to at times are very, very difficult and challenging, and that individual might be on their best moment. But it's because of the moment they're in, and to accommodate as best you can, and to get them to a safer place, if it's providing them with just a sounding board of talking, mentoring, listening, counseling them, providing medical attention, whatever it is. Maybe it needs to be where we make an arrest because that's what's best for them at the moment. But it can be very challenging at times.
Yeah, I mean, you're dealing with people, so hats off to you for doing that and dealing with that, because most people never have to experience that in their everyday lives or in their careers, and that's what you're dealing with all the time as a law enforcement officer. Yeah. So what's some of the better aspects of your job? Like, what would you say is the best part about being a trooper?
Man, the best was the freedom, first off. I mean, going wherever you want. I mean, you get to really, like I started with, go wherever you want, enforce and be what you want to be. The best thing, I mean, I think about my difficult days, but honestly, the days that are like, man, that was an amazing day. I'll tell you right now, there's nothing better than walking into an elementary school in uniform. I mean, you are like a superhero.
Their eyes light up.
Goodness, their eyes get so big, their mouth drops. They're like, oh, wow, unbelievable. And you feel so amazing because the kids light up when they see you, and they are in awe of the uniform and the role that you have. It's really, really nice to know that you are part of that thin blue line, as we say in law enforcement, or as a first responder, to know that the way how you serve is in the youngest of minds, honorable, proud. I mean, that's neat to see that. Yeah. I find myself on difficult days when I've handled something or something feels really hard I'm dealing with. I will often, if it's a Monday through Friday during the school hours, I'll go to a school unexpectedly, walk in the front office. Hey, I'm Trooper Ben with the Kansas Hop Patrol. Can I just walk in there and talk to kids at the cafeteria? And they love it, first off. They're like, yeah, absolutely. So I just walk around and talk to kids in the cafeteria and talk to them. Just be a good listener again, learning about their world and what interests them, but also giving them an opportunity to ask questions of me, to see a smiling officer, smiling face, to be a good mentor and stuff like that. But that's really, really a wonderful thing of this job.
Put a good impression in their minds of what an officer is.
It is. It's a very, very nice moment. So there's those moments. I just, the moments of I don't know, there's things that you get to experience as a state trooper that's honorable, memorable, and it's often in moments of difficulty. I think about when I get a call on the radio of something bad that's occurred, and I will turn my patrol car towards it, and put my foot to the floor, drive lights and sirens, try to get there as quick as I can to respond and make a difference. And as I'm responding to those difficult moments, I think about how people at the scene are probably calling 911, probably scared, and how it's like, man, I'm going to be there to make a difference for them. And as I get closer, I start thinking about how they can probably hear my siren.
Yeah.
Maybe that comforts them and calms them.
Yeah.
And as I get closer, maybe they can see my lights, and then maybe that comforts and calms them. But then when I get there and I put my hat on and I'm trying to assess what to do for them, again, it doesn't matter where we fall in the political world. I don't care. They don't care. It's
right.
about helping them. And to be able to be that person to do that, it's wonderful.
Extremely rewarding.
Yes, and it doesn't really matter. You don't really think about your paycheck or what it's like, man, I'm doing something that others don't get to do. I'm making a difference.
A real difference, yeah.
And it carries on. So when you see when you see those individuals in your community and you see them, man, to know you made a big difference for them in a positive way, they often will come up to you, man, oh, thank you. How you doing, Trooper Ben? You've
right.
made such an impression on them. That it's just a nice moment, and that's what
such a cool thing.
First responders get to experience. So
yeah.
when you go into law enforcement, when you go into first responding and being a first responder, you live a life not about a paycheck. You live a life about a purpose.
Yeah.
And if you have a purpose-driven life, your life's going to be pretty good, and that's what it is to be in first.
A lot of people don't have that,
No, they don't.
A lot of people live their day-to-day just getting by.
Yeah.
Dreading the next day at work.
I know, not me though. I'm fearing retirement. I mean, as a trooper, I think the vast majority of troopers fear the day they retire.
Is it like the military where there's a certain age you reach? And
no, I mean we can go. The way it works with our retirement plan is that it's your years of service plus your age. Add that together. The magic number is 75. So as soon as you hit that magic number of 75, you can then retire. So for me, an example, I will be 50 in a couple of years, and I will have then at least 25 years of service, so that'll equal out to 50, so I can retire. So I could retire at 50 years of age, and if I want to, I could. Most of our troopers, though, while the doorway opens up to retire, I think a lot of troopers don't because they enjoy what they're doing. They feel like they're making a difference. And then usually at about 36 years of service is when you'll see troopers really start exiting out, because at 36 years of service, it's the same as working 40 years of service. There's no financial benefit of you. 36 years sort of caps out. That's as much as you're going to get for retirement. And we'll see troopers starting exiting out at that longer end of it. But if I want to stay longer than that, hey, go do it.
I'll let you.
You might see me walking up with a walker. You'll be like, hey, can I see your license? There's Trooper Ben over there still doing his thing, the longest serving trooper you've ever seen. Who knows?
Who knows, man? Yeah. If you're still physically active at that age, why not?
At some point, right? I'm sure I'll get the stink eye, the side eye, like, Trooper Ben, you got to go. It's like enough of this. But hey, who knows? I mean, I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and I know that the time that I have in this uniform is not endless.
Yeah.
There's a time where it will end, and I will be that retired trooper at McDonald's drinking coffee, and I'll see troopers walking, and I'll be like walking over to them. Hey, I used to be Trooper Ben. They're probably giving me this look like, what are you talking?
Oh no, they'll know because they'll all have Twitter accounts. They'll know who the godfather of Twitter accounts is.
Yeah,
right.
Who knows? By that time, there'll be something different or something, and I'll be nothing. But I know that during the time that I have in this uniform, that I've tried to do something. I say this, and sometimes it comes across as being arrogant, but I don't want you to view that, and I don't want listeners or viewers to know this or to view it this way. I don't want to be arrogant. It's comfortable and confidence. And the reality is that I recognize I'm not going to be in uniform forever, that my time is a certain amount of time.
Right. And
in the time that I'm in this uniform, I don't want to be average. I want to be exceptional. I want people to recognize that, man, that's Trooper Ben, and that he's doing something different. And there's sort of a knownness of me. And that when I do retire at some point, it's like, man, look at that. Can you try to get to that level? And we should also be better.
Everybody should be striving
Everybody
for that.
should try to be that way.
Yeah.
Everybody should try to be exceptional in what they're doing. But I think in today's world, we get pressured or shunned or, you're stepping outside of what everybody else is doing. Well, the reality is when you're stepping outside of what others are doing, you're going to have to take the hits. You're going to have to, to push forward and be a leader. That means you're blazing the trail.
Yeah, and if you're not trying to be the best, why are you doing it?
Yeah, and we shouldn't shy away from that. So if it's podcasts, if it's doing the media stuff, it's whatever it is, man, be the best at it. Get at it. Be the best. Be notable. And make everybody realize that you set the standard for whatever craft you have. And then whenever that time does end,
you'll leave a legacy.
Yeah, to everybody like, man, look at that. I want to try to be at that level.
Yeah, and the world needs people like that.
Well, that's what I hope. That's what I want people to know of me. So that we in our badge numbers, 378 is my badge number. These numbers, they get rotated out. So when I retire, there will be another 378.
They don't retire your numbers?
No, they do not. So there was a 378 before me. I'm 378 now. When I retire, there'll be another 378. And that's okay. There'll be other 378s, but there will never be another Trooper Ben.
Right.
That's what I hope.
I think you've already established that.
Yeah. That's what I want. I want people to say that there's no other Trooper Ben like Trooper Ben, and there's nothing wrong with saying that. To be comfortable and confident and strive to try to get to where you want to get to.
Well, you're the guy. You're the guy.
I'm trying to be that guy.
Just from what I see online. I mean, no offense to other troopers out there, but it's not as fun to follow other troopers as it is to follow Trooper Ben.
I think I think the reality is I do stuff on social and people are like, is this guy really a trooper? Like, what is he posting? What's he doing?
I could definitely see people asking that and questioning that.
But I think that's what people do.
Yeah.
Is that I think a lot of social accounts that are in law enforcement or first responder accounts is that they're very clinical, very sterile, very polished, very behind the podium, delivering a scripted message. And that doesn't come across as being authentic. It doesn't come across as being you. But for me, in my page, I want to be me. I want to be authentic. I want to be vulnerable. I want to, if I'm going to laugh, I'm going to laugh. If something doesn't feel right, I'm going to talk about it. If I need to cry, I'm going to cry. And I want people to know that I care. And I do
care. And it's
care.
worked. I mean, obviously, that's contributed to your success that you've had.
I think with being real and being vulnerable and being authentic, that I think it does matter. I think it does work because then people feel like they can
approach
have
you.
Comfort with me.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
And you also probably recruit quite a bit of people out there.
I do.
By being who you are.
I do. Do you want to be a trooper? Let's make this happen.
It's not out of the
Now's
question.
the time. Let's make this happen.
If podcasting doesn't work out for me.
I know. Look, do podcasts for the Highway Patrol. You could be the new trailblazer.
I could.
I know. You
That
never
would be
know.
cool. I think if I became a trooper, people would be like, I don't believe that.
Well, what would you enforce? What would be your thing? I always like to ask this, like, what would be your thing? If I could write tickets today, I'd be after that all day long. If you had, like, here's your ticket book, go out there and enforce what your thing and be like, I'm going to go after that thing.
You know what my thing would be?
What would it be?
Just because I experienced it. I would love to pull up to parties of underage kids and flip my lights on.
Look at you. And just let them scatter.
And watch them scatter.
And then turn them off and laugh.
That happened to me, and as I've gotten older, I realized that those officers were probably laughing when I thought I was going to be shot down.
That's your thing.
Yeah.
Hey, there's a role for you within all law enforcement that we could connect.
That's what I've learned today. Is that you can grow in any direction you want to in law enforcement, which is amazing. You don't normally think of that.
I know. In the Highway Patrol, you certainly have the freedoms to be in your thing. So it's nice, but.
Are there any weird misconceptions that people have about you as a trooper?
Well, I think one of the things that people always ask me when it comes to a trooper, and I imagine people maybe viewing this are thinking the same thing. What's the difference between a state trooper and a highway patrolman? Mm-hmm. I have that all the time. Like, hey, are you a highway patrolman or are you a state trooper? And the reality is we're the same thing. So I am a state trooper. That's my title, and I work for the Kansas Highway Patrol. It's the same agency. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people think that there's like two separate agencies. Like there's highway patrolmen and then there's state troopers. It's the same.
Yeah.
So there's that. Really, that's the only thing that stands out. I guess misconceptions. I mean, quotas. We have quotas.
Yeah.
I get that. I had that question today at my safety program. Like, you guys have quotas?
Got to get 10 tickets today.
I know. Like, you better get out there and do that.
And that's not a thing.
There's not that. I mean, nothing with that. The Highway Patrol has a thing we have, which is we want to have public contacts. So they expect us to have, on average, like one contact per hour, which is nothing. Like, that's so easy to do. So that contact could be like this. This is a contact right now. Me telling my story, talking about the Highway Patrol, but it could be changing a flat tire, installing a car seat, giving a safety program, giving directions, giving a warning, giving a ticket, making an arrest, working an accident.
Okay.
So any contact is what the Highway Patrol wants.
Okay.
And we measure that. So we turn in every 15 days. We have a 15-day report that submits, like, what have you done in the last 15 days? And I imagine our supervisors look at that and they're like, hey, you have, like, no contacts. Like, what are you doing? So our contact number, we need to have a good amount of contacts with the public.
It looks better.
Yeah, and it could be anything. So if I would go 6 months, never writing a ticket, never making an arrest, the Highway Patrol would have no issues with that in any way, as long as I have contacts. And if I have on my 15 days a bunch of activity with programs and talking and doing the media, I mean, that's what I do in today's world. So my contact sheet, my 15 days are a majority of that these days. They're going to be like, good, go at it. No problem. So it's really just that. They want us to have contact. And if you're not doing that, then there's going to be a conversation of like, what are you doing each day?
You parking somewhere and sleeping?
I know. So having contact, and it's nice to know that you can go out there and get active in the areas you want, as I've said before, but there's nothing that says you got to have a certain amount of enforcement. You know, quotas are not something that agencies should have, in my mind. I mean, you need to go out there and enforce for when it needs to be enforced.
Exactly. That's a weird concept.
Yeah.
To think that you have to meet this certain number of tickets and stuff.
Now, there is one thing, and I always want to say this, there is one thing, we have a number. I don't like the word quota because quota seems to be a negative viewpoint, but we do have a number which is for truck inspections, and that's not a quota as I would say, or what people would say. We have to have so many truck inspections per quarter to keep certified.
Oh, okay.
So troopers that are truck certified, waving in semis, making sure these semis are meeting for certain federal regulations, if they're not meeting their number of truck inspections per quarter, then they can become decertified, and that's a big problem. They need to be certified in maintaining, doing truck inspections. And now that truck inspection could be nothing. It doesn't mean that they have to enforce. So that inspection could be simply, hey, I want to stop you, look at your paperwork, hey, you're good, see you later.
I don't think anybody is going to argue against that. Or
I don't think that's an
that.
issue because we need to make sure that these commercial motor vehicles that are hauling a lot of weight, a lot of load, that are what at times could be a more dangerous piece of equipment moving down the roadway is a safe piece of equipment operated safely.
Yeah.
And we have federal regs that require certain things of these drivers, so many sleeper hours, sleeper berth, off-duty hours, things like that. So for our troopers to make those stops and, hey, are you overweight? Have you got enough sleep? You got the right equipment? Are your brakes working properly? We need to make sure we have those amount of inspections per quarter to keep certified. So that's the only number I guess you could think of that we have to maintain. I used to be a truck certified trooper. When I took on this position, they no longer required me to have that, so I was quick to give that up because truck world can be very challenging in maintaining, what it is to be truck certified, knowing all the different federal regulations that are ever changing. So,
well, we do hold them to a little bit of a higher standard for a good reason.
Yeah,
they could take out a lot more lives with the vehicles they're in.
Absolutely. I mean, something as big as that, hauling a lot of weight and load. I mean, that can be devastating if it's not used safely and the equipment's not maintained safely. So our troopers are actively making stops on semis all the time.
Yeah.
So,
well, right on.
Is there anything else you can think of? Misconceptions? What are the man?
Do you guys all love donuts?
No, I don't. I mean, I'm sure there is, but I need to qualify that. I mean, you're asking me if there's somebody else in
the
here.
Stereotype here.
I know. I love donuts, but I don't eat donuts in uniform. I know that. It's too easy for the cameras to come out.
I saw your tweet about it the other day.
It's one of my rules, man. As I posted, I have 2 rules in uniform. The first rule from the beginning of my career is I don't eat donuts in uniform because it's too easy for the paparazzi to take photos. And the second rule I have in uniform is to always wear my bulletproof vest. Always. If I'm in uniform, I got my vest on. And that's something that's an optional thing for the patrol. You don't have to. You get a vest, but the Highway Patrol does not require you to wear that vest. For me, it is a requirement. I in my mind, will always wear a vest. It's comparable to like seatbelts. The law says you have to wear your seatbelt, but the reality is you don't at times. It's not like I'm sitting there standing right next to you when you get in a vehicle, but like, hey, you going to buckle up or not?
Buckle that up.
I mean, it's really up to you. Now, there's benefits and consequences of the choices you make, but the same thing's true with me is that I wear my seatbelt because I don't know when somebody else is going to put me in a situation where I want it.
Yeah.
And that could be at any moment. So I need to wear it at all times, not knowing when that moment might develop. And the same thing's true with a seatbelt. You better wear your seatbelt, not because of a law, because you never know when someone else might put you in a situation where you're going to want it.
Exactly.
So
I know seatbelts are your thing, too.
It is, man. It's sort of my mantra. Seatbelts, Crocs. Don't ever wear Crocs.
Ooh.
You know, beans and chili. You got to have beans and chili.
That's beans and chili.
I know, because people that don't do that.
These are Trooper Ben's ride or die
These are the hard rules. I know. You got to have beans and chili.
Beans and chili, okay.
That's right. That's an
None of that Cincinnati chili where you put it on a hot dog.
No. But there's things, man.
Do you ever have people argue with you about the seatbelt thing that say, well, what about if you get trapped in a car and the seatbelt keeps you,
Yes. So I have that statement. People will say, man, I don't want to wear my seatbelt because if I'm in a crash and the vehicle catches on fire or the vehicle goes into water, I'm going to burn or drown, and I'm going to die because of fire or water. Well, the reality is I can speak to that a little bit because the reality is that, wrecks, when we work wrecks, we gather data. We know certain things of wrecks, and we know that of crashes where somebody dies because of fire and water and they were wearing their seatbelt at the time, that accounts for less than 0.5% of all fatalities across our nation. So it's such a small, insignificant, unrealistic moments.
Right.
While anything can occur in all of these different scenarios, it is such a unrealistic concern compared to what would be the benefits a seatbelt could provide you. Mm-hmm. And by wearing a seatbelt, man, if a crash occurs, you're probably more readily accessible to have an awareness to be able to get yourself out because you're probably not as injured as much compared to being unbuckled. The reality is you might be knocked out, be more impaired, and have difficulty in getting yourself out if there's fire and water. So I do have people say that. Another thing I have people say to me is, why do I have to wear a seatbelt when that school bus that just drove by doesn't have anybody buckled up? All those kids over there don't have seatbelts on them, but it's so important that I wear that. But look at those kids over there. And the reality is that, it would be nice if we had all those kids buckled up. But the reality is that school buses are the safest way to travel in our nation. So if, again, we look at the data, look at the statistics, we know that getting on a bus is a very, very safe location. Mm-hmm. And if we want to really make sure kids are safe, it's when they're waiting for the bus is when we see kids most likely injured and killed. It's just waiting, not when they're on. When they're on the bus, that's a very safe location. So, we need to recognize there's differences in different situations in vehicles and things like that.
Well, people like to, pick out these little things so they can justify or, they're just angry that they're being told what to do or whatnot. You know what always cracks me up? I'm old enough to remember when Kansas passed the seatbelt law. And I remember seeing people on the news that were like protesting it, or they would wear like a belt around their waist that would say, I'm wearing
really?
Yeah. But it makes me laugh because I recently saw some videos online of 1980s when they were passing the laws on drinking and driving.
I was actually thinking
of
the same thing. When you were mentioning this, my mind went to that same video because I seen this trending and I'm like, look at these individuals talking about just that. Like, if I want to drink a beer and drive home, it shouldn't be that none of it. Don't tell me what to do. And I'm thinking, no, we don't think that way today.
Well, no. I mean, if somebody said that now, they'd get crucified online.
But back then,
there was a certain period where it was widely accepted to just drink beer on your way home from work.
Well, it's still that way for some.
Well, I'm sure
it is. We try to frown upon that now in today's world, but there is.
It's crazy how much the world changes.
It is. I mean, certainly, people that say, "Man, people would say, man, I never wore a seatbelt when I was a little kid." I sat in that minivan or I sat in that station wagon facing to the rear. I laid in the back window. Well, the reality is, we learned that was a pretty dangerous time. There's a lot of kids that are injured and killed at that time.
Exactly.
So we've evolved on that. The same thing's true with seatbelts and people buckling up. So it's one of my things. People know that in social. Seatbelts are one of my mantras, I guess, to try to continue to deliver that message. So.
Well, it's definitely been spreading because I've seen it for a long time now. Yeah, and that's all because of you. Buckle up.
I do it a lot. I know. Yeah. It is.
Do you have any last advice or anything you want to say out there to the world?
Last advice, man. Look at this. Because this is going to be on the interweb. This
will be on the internet.
This is like forever. This is like once it's there, it never goes away.
Yep.
I know. So this
might be a follow through with what you say here.
I know. Well, years later, when I'm a retiree, I might reflect back to this moment, and be like, "Look at me, how young I look," or something.
You don't want somebody to roll up and catch you without a seatbelt.
I know. That's it. Last words. I guess I want people to know that I am one of many within the Kansas Highway Patrol that are so proud to wear this uniform and be a state trooper. And people know me because I'm on social, and the role that I have is to be in front, to be visible, to be accessible. And with that comes a knownness of me. But I tell you what, there are so many troopers across the Kansas Highway Patrol that are doing significantly impactful, positive things within our state that the public doesn't know about. That if they happen to have a Twitter page, the public would be like, man, that's Trooper so-and-so, look at that.
Yeah.
But they're not telling their story because they don't have that channel or platform like I have. And often in first responders, they don't want to tell their story. They think it's boasting or bragging. And in my mind, it's being comfortable and confident about the things that you do and being proud of it. But I guess I want people to understand that, hey, you might know me, you might know what I do out there, but that's the role that I have. And to also know that there's so many other people around that wear this uniform that are doing bigger and better things than me, and that you don't know it, but it's happening out there. And prior to me being on social media, I was the same Trooper Ben as I am now, but you didn't know me. And there's a lot of troopers out there you don't know by name, but they're out there doing wonderful things and making our state safer, and they're proudly wanting to make a difference for you if the call ever occurs where you're needing assistance. And I'm fearful of the day that I retire from the Kansas Highway Patrol.
Yeah. So. Well, that's a beautiful thing, man. And thank you for your service, first of all.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for all that you do out there in social media in Kansas with everything, getting the message out there. You truly are making a huge difference. And
That's right. Thank you.
I think you're aware of that, but we want to thank you, and I want to thank you personally just for everything that you do. So
Thank you.
Our community is a better place because of you.
Well, I'll tell you what, thank you for inviting me. The coffee's been good. The seat is quite cushiony. And if there's an opportunity where it's like, hey, we should have Trooper Ben back, then throw me an invite.
Yeah.
And if there's a moment where we realize, man, we can't have that guy back ever again, that's okay as well. But
Did you see him on there?
I know.
No.
But thank you for inviting me. today.
It was an honor to have you on, seriously. Yeah. So tell everybody where they can find you at online.
So my Twitter account, again, is at TrooperBenKHP. So that's most notable of where I'm located. I do run the Highway Patrol's Facebook page for North Central Kansas, which is Troop C. So if you search Kansas Highway Patrol Troop C, you're going to come across that Facebook page. The Highway Patrol has an Instagram page. We do not have TikTok. That is banned across all government properties.
Yeah, that is controversial.
But I know
right
that's
now.
sort of the thing. But we have Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter is where we're most known. And for me, it's on Twitter. That's my platform of choice. And to follow me, I try to follow back. And if there's ever a question the public would have, shoot me a direct message, because I will more than likely follow you back, and then that gives you an opportunity to send me direct messages.
Yeah.
So I try to keep that doorway open to be able to have those conversations.
Yeah, and as usual, for everybody listening and watching, that's all in my description. You can go find it and go follow him. He'll hopefully give you a follow back.
I do, unless you tweet about Justin Bieber a whole bunch.
Oh, no.
Then it's a hard unfollow.
Well, why'd you follow me?
I mean, if you're blasting me with JB all the day long, I'd be like, I got to get out of this.
Just him specifically?
I know, just him specifically.
You're a hater, huh?
If I get, you can only take so much JB, Justin Bieber. I mean, at some point, it's like, let me tap out of this follow here.
That is funny.
So the people know the parameters now.
So if Trooper Ben pulls you over, folks, don't have that Justin Bieber blaring through your speakers.
That's exactly
You're getting
right.
a ticket.
That's what's going to happen now, and I'm going to make a traffic stop, and people are like, hit him with the JB. You never know.
All right. Well, man, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
again. And everybody buckle up out there, or Trooper
That's
Ben's
right.
coming for you.
That's right. Please always wear your seatbelt. Be safe. And if you have interest in the Kansas Highway Patrol and a career path, since this is careers over coffee,
Careers
but
over
it's beers,
coffee.
I know.
Careers over coffee
Careers
today.
over beer. But if you have interest in learning more about the Kansas Highway Patrol, the best thing to go to is, certainly you can go to my Twitter page, but khpjobs.org is the spot when it comes to any career path within the Kansas Highway Patrol. That's a good spot to sort of learn more about the Highway Patrol.
Right on. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Trooper Ben. Cheers, sir.
Okay, cheers. Thank you so much.
Thank you.